In Algebra 2, Section 4-5, we're dealing with completing the squares. Now that you guys are experts at square roots and imaginary numbers and all that, we're going to use that to our advantage, and we're going to manipulate the equation so that we get parentheses. Remember when we were doing factoring with the two bubbles? But we're going to get two of the same bubble, so then that way we can square root both sides. Again, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, let's do an example and see if maybe it clarifies things a little bit. So it says x squared plus 4x minus 12 equals 0. Now, negative 12 is not a perfect square. I can do whatever I want to these equations as long as I follow the rule that whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other side, right? So if I want to take x squared, and if I want to just add 12 to get rid of it, and I end up with x squared plus 4x equals 12. Okay? So then I can put something on this side that makes a perfect square. This is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to take, so the first one is I'm going to bring the constant, this is my constant, to the other side. The second one is I'm going to take half of b. Now if you're not sure why we're doing it, give me a second and let's solve this and then you'll see why we're doing it. But for now, let's follow the rules. Take half of b, so this is our b, we're going to take half. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. Half of 4 is 2. And then we're going to add it, we're going to take half of b and then square it. So we're going to take 4, we're going to divide it by 2, which is 2, and then we're going to square it, which is 4. And whatever that number is from step 2, I'm going to add it to both sides. I have to do it to both sides. So I'm going to add 4 and add 4. This gives me x squared plus 4x plus 4 equals 16. Now watch what it does. Remember when when we were factoring, two numbers when multiplied together gets me the last number, but when added together gets me the first. So 2 times 2 gets me 4, and 2 plus 2 gives me 4. What that gives me is x plus 2 and x plus 2 equals 16. Because these are exactly the same, what this looks like is x plus 2 squared equals 16. Why is this easier? Well then, I just square root both sides. And this gives me x plus 2 equals plus or minus 4, right? Because 4 times 4 is 16, and 4 minus 4 is 16. So, here, I have two problems, right? I have x plus 2 equals positive 4, and x plus 2 equals negative 4. And then I just solve. Minus 2, minus 2. This gives me x equals 2, and this minus 2, and x equals 6. I can also, so here are my two answers. If I have x plus 2 equals plus or minus 4, I can also minus 2 from both sides. So x equals plus or minus 4 minus 2. Okay? And let me tell you why an answer like that will be handy in the future, even though these are whole numbers. So positive 4 minus 2 is 2. Negative 4 minus 2 is 6. I mean negative 6. Why did I put 6? So if I want to do the same thing here, I'm going to follow the steps. So hopefully this makes sense, right? I'm going to bring the constant to the other side so I have a clean slate. Now I can manipulate it so that I can get two of the same bubbles, but whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. And then I square root both sides. And then I end up with x plus 2 equals plus or minus 4, which gives me the two answers. Now, in the last section, you didn't really have to pay attention to the plus or minus. This one you do, because there's two answers that are involved in this. All right? So I had written down the equation wrong for number 2. So if you had it as the other equation, go ahead and change it. But x squared plus 8x plus 22 equals 0 is what we're going to solve. So we're going to apply the same thing we learned over here. We're going to bring the constant to the other side. So minus 22. Then we end up with having x squared plus 8x equals negative 22. And then we're going to take half of b, so half of b is 4, and square it, so 16. So I'm going to add 16, but what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So I end up with x squared plus 8x plus 16 equals negative 6. Right? So from here, I then know that two numbers when multiplied together and added together is when I do this, I just, the number that goes here, the number that goes here is just half of that number. So half of positive 8 is positive 4, and then I can solve it, just like I solved the rest. Solve the other side. Okay, so I'm going to start by square rooting both sides. I end up with x plus 4 equals, and that negative in there means that I'm going to do square root of 6i. And this is the reason why this is important, because I'm going to minus 4 on both sides. And my answer is going to be x equals negative 4 plus or minus root 6i. Because it's negative 4 plus 6i and negative 4 minus 6i. Because this is not going to give me a whole number, I'm not going to even do it like I did this, because these have whole numbers, so it's a lot easier. So in this case, I just write it as a whole. I would write it this way for number 1, but because this gives me whole numbers, that's why I wrote it out as individuals. But this one would give me a decimal, so I'm just going to leave my answer like that, and it's clean and done. So go ahead and pause this, write it down, try page 260, numbers 9 and 11, 260, number 9, 11, and I will see you in class.